20% of Iran's GDP sits inside a network of foundations that pays no taxes, answers to no parliament, and reports exclusively to one man. They command 66% of the country's glass production, 40% of its soft drinks, and over 100 agricultural enterprises, all under the legal mandate of charity. What they've constructed is a $300 billion infrastructure trap, one that reaches into nearly every sector, keeping 90 million people fed, housed, and employed. How that system was engineered starts with what arrives on an Iranian dinner table. A single company, the Bonyad-e Mostazafan, sits at the center of Iran's food and industrial supply chains. Its reach begins in the wheat fields of Khorasan and stretches all the way to the bottling plants that line the outskirts of Tehran. The foundation and its affiliates own more than 115 companies in the agriculture sector alone, controlling the production, processing, and distribution of basic staples. At the industrial level, their grip is even more pronounced. Two-thirds of Iran's glass production flows through Bonyad-owned factories. In the soft drink market, 40% of all bottles are filled by subsidiaries operating under the foundation's legal shield. Textile mills, flour plants, and sugar refineries, many privatized in the 1990s at below-market rates, now report directly to Bonyad headquarters. This vertical integration is not accidental. During the so-called insider privatization era, state enterprises and urban lands were transferred to the Bonyads under the guise of market reform. These transactions, often devoid of public bidding or transparent audits, allowed the foundations to acquire strategic assets while retaining full tax exemption. Today, the Bonyad-e Mostazafan's industrial arm manages nearly 20% of Iran's textile output and dominates the logistics networks that move grain, sugar, and edible oil from port to province. The legal structure behind this expansion is as significant as the assets themselves. All Bonyad holdings enjoy permanent exemption from corporate taxes. Profits are not returned to the state treasury or distributed as public revenue. Instead, they are reinvested into new ventures, compounding the foundation's economic weight year after year. The Supreme Audit Court has been denied access to these financials since 2010. No independent audit has ever been completed, and no parliamentary committee has been permitted to review the balance sheets. Accountability rests solely with the supreme leader, bypassing every standard mechanism of oversight. The numbers reveal the scale of this system. The Bonyad network now controls more than 40% of Iran's soft drinks, two-thirds of its glass, and one-fifth of the textile sector. In agriculture, its 115 affiliated firms shape over 15% of national output, enough to influence the price and availability of bread, rice, and cooking oil for millions. In total, the foundation's direct and indirect holdings account for approximately 20% of the country's gross domestic product, a figure that places it second only to the national Iranian oil company. Competition in these sectors is stifled by design. Independent producers face a dual barrier. They must pay full corporate taxes and navigate a regulatory landscape that grants preferential access to Bonyad-linked firms. The result is a market where entry is limited. Prices are set behind closed doors, and the supposed beneficiaries, the oppressed, rarely see the promised returns. For the average Iranian, the Bonyad's monopoly means that the food on the table and the goods on the shelf are shaped by an institution that operates beyond the reach of public scrutiny. The infrastructure trap is not just a matter of physical assets, but of legal and economic architecture built to endure. The Tehran Grand Bazaar, once the heart of Iran's commercial life, is now caught in the undertow of the Bonyad-driven economic order. For centuries, its vaulted corridors served as the country's central processor, where prices were set, supply chains were coordinated, and livelihoods were secured for thousands of independent merchants. But the numbers now tell a stark story. According to the Tehran Chamber of Guilds, the bazaar's wholesale and retail turnover has dropped by nearly 30% since 2015. The Ministry of Industry, Mine and Trade confirms a similar decline, an economic contraction that has left entire rows of stalls shuttered, and the hum of commerce replaced by uncertainty. Behind these figures lies a structural imbalance. Bonyad-linked firms enjoy sweeping customs exemptions under Article 12B of the 2023 Customs Code, granting them a 0% import duty on strategic commodities. In the last fiscal year alone, nearly $1.9 billion in duty-free imports, wheat, edible oil, and dairy entered the country through Bonyad channels. Traditional bazaar importers, by contrast, pay a standard 15% tariff on the same goods. The Parliamentary Commission on Trade notes that these exemptions are not published in the public tariff schedule. They are buried in internal ministerial memos, effectively invisible to the merchants whose livelihoods are at stake. For many, the impact is deeply personal. Mohammad Reza, a fourth-generation carpet trader, watched his family's annual sales collapse from $2 million in 2010 to just $600,000 in 2024. His shop, once a bustling hub, has been reduced to a single room. He is far from alone. The Union of Traditional Merchants estimates that more than 5,000 traders joined a mass protest on February 23, 2026, blocking the Khalvat-e Bazaar gate and demanding an end to Bonyad tax privileges. Police reports recorded over 5,000 detentions that day. It was the largest merchant mobilization since the 2019 price shock protests. The grievances run deeper than lost revenue. Merchants describe a sense of betrayal. A system that once promised opportunity now delivers exclusion. The bazaar's role as economic CPU is eroded by a parallel supply chain, one that privileges foundation-linked conglomerates and sidelines the very people the economy once relied upon. Dr. Hossein Rahimi, a prominent human rights lawyer, says that tax exemption for Bonyads robs the public treasury and destroys bazaar livelihoods. Mohammad Reza's story is emblematic of a whole generation of ruined merchants. This fracture between the old and new economies is not just a matter of numbers. It is a social rupture, setting the stage for broader unrest. The bazaar's decline foreshadows the kind of protest and backlash that would later erupt around water rights and dam mismanagement, as the infrastructure trap tightens its hold on every sector of Iranian life. Iran's dam network stands as one of the most visible achievements of the post-revolutionary state. Yet beneath the concrete and steel lies a system defined by centralized control and profit extraction. Over 700 dams have been commissioned since 1979, with more than 80% of new projects awarded to firms under the umbrella of Khatam al-Anbiya Construction Headquarters, a conglomerate directly linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and closely aligned with the Bonyad-e Mostazafan. These contracts rarely enter the public bidding process. Instead, they are routed through closed-door negotiations, often with financing provided by Bonyad-backed banks and credit lines. The architecture of this system is designed for maximum insulation from oversight. Exclusive supply clauses embedded in procurement contracts guarantee that turbines, steel, and cement are sourced from affiliated subsidiaries. These markups are not marginal. In the case of the Lake Dam, a 15% equipment premium was written directly into the contract, funneling surplus revenue back to banks controlled by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Parliamentary audit records show that Gotfand High Dam, another flagship project, ran nearly $500 million over budget, with cost overruns attributed to unforeseen geological conditions. Yet no independent review was permitted. Parviz Fatah, a former officer in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and later head of the Bonyad-e Mostazafan, played a central role in consolidating this model. Under his leadership, the foundation's construction portfolio expanded by nearly half, with a particular focus on water infrastructure. FATA's tenure saw the awarding of the $500 million Mahab Codes water distribution contract, which included a 10-year exclusivity clause, effectively locking regional water markets under Bonyad control. The Lachian Dam offers a stark illustration of the consequences. Completed in 2020 with a design capacity of 1.8 billion cubic meters, the reservoir now operates at roughly 10% of its intended volume. Official Ministry of Energy bulletins confirm this figure, while independent satellite analysis from the same period shows a matching reduction in surface area. The primary cause is not drought alone, but the diversion of water to irrigation schemes affiliated with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and persistent delays in turbine upgrades. This pattern is not limited to Lachian. Across the country, dam projects owned or managed by the military Bonyad complex display similar inefficiencies, including underutilized capacity, inflated consumer water rates, and a lack of transparent maintenance schedules. The profit logic embedded in these contracts ensures that revenue circulates within a closed loop, benefiting a select group of state-linked entities, while the broader public faces water scarcity and rising costs. The dam empire, built in the name of national development, has become a mechanism for extracting value from one of Iran's most vital resources, all while shielding its operations from meaningful scrutiny. The cost of Iran's dam-building spree is measured not only in budgets and contracts, but in the lives and landscapes transformed in its wake. The Gotwand High Dam, once promoted as a symbol of national progress, surpassed its original budget by more than $1 billion United States dollars. Official explanations cite unforeseen geological conditions, yet no independent audit has ever clarified where the money went or how the overruns accumulated. What remains clear is the environmental aftermath: rising salinity levels in the Des River Basin, widespread crop failures downstream, and a rapid decline in local fisheries. Hydrologists have traced these changes directly to mismanaged water releases and poorly engineered containment, consequences of a procurement system insulated from public oversight. Across the Northwest, Lake Urmia stands as a stark warning. Once the largest saltwater lake in the Middle East, its surface area has shrunk by more than 80% since 2000. Satellite analyses reveal a mosaic of cracked earth and receding shorelines, the direct result of upstream damming and relentless irrigation withdrawals. Annual water extraction in the basin has more than doubled over 3 decades, driven by irrigation schemes linked to Bonyads and to the IRGC that prioritize affiliated agribusinesses over ecological balance. The lake's collapse has triggered a cascade of dust storms, rising respiratory illness, and the loss of thousands of livelihoods tied to fishing and agriculture. The term Water Mafia has entered public discourse as frustration turns to protest. In Isfahan, the drying of the Zayandarud River has left entire farming communities without irrigation. November 2021 saw thousands of farmers stage a sit-in along the riverbed, demanding the restoration of water rights and an end to exclusive contracts that lock regional supply under Bonyad control. The government's response was swift and forceful. Security units moved in, resulting in at least 12 deaths and more than 1,200 arrests according to human rights groups. These numbers, drawn from police records and independent monitors, reflect the scale of the backlash against a system that treats water as a commodity to be traded, rather than a public good to be shared. The fallout is not limited to rural areas. Urban residents face rising water tariffs and periodic shortages as resources are diverted to large-scale projects with little public input. The infrastructure that was meant to secure the nation's future has become a flashpoint of anger and grief, fueling a cycle of protest and repression. Behind the technical language of contracts and capacity lies a simple reality: the monopoly over water, enforced by the so-called Water Mafia, has deepened both environmental crisis and social unrest. The human cost of this system is now visible in the parched soil of Urmia, the empty channels of Isfahan, and the long lines of detainees whose only demand was a fair share of a disappearing resource. In July 2023, the tanker Sarvan left Abadan under a Panamanian flag, heading for the Indonesian Sea. At 2:17 UTC, 150 nautical miles east of Bali, its AIS transponder sent a false position, then disappeared from tracking systems. For 42 hours, Sarvan's location was hidden, an intentional blackout. On July 13th, satellite images caught Sarvan moored beside another tanker, Yaz, with oil hoses stretched between them. This covert ship-to-ship transfer took place without notifying the International Maritime Organization, violating Circular 2892. Evasion here is calculated. AIS spoofing is not just flipping a switch. Forensic analysts found Sarvan's MMSI reassigned to a dormant vessel, creating a phantom trail for satellite feeds. Meanwhile, the flag registry shifted through a chain of paper companies. The Hong Kong company's registry lists HCX067 and Ro1 Ltd as owner, but the Panama Papers tie this company to the Tehran Charity Trust, a Bonyad-controlled entity managed by senior clerics. Insurance for both Sarvan and Yaz leads to a Dubai free zone firm, itself a subsidiary of Al Mansour Reinsurance, known for reflagging sanctioned Iranian ships. Ownership records form a deliberate maze, from Hong Kong to Panama to the UAE, each layer built to frustrate regulators. In late 2024, Sarvan was quietly sold to Atlantic Maritime Ltd, a Panama-registered shell, and reflagged to Liberia. The $12 million transaction was logged as a distressed sale, a classic move to keep assets out of reach as enforcement tightens. U.S. Treasury sanctions arrived in March 2025, placing Sarvan and Yaz on the specially designated nationals list for facilitating Iranian oil exports. The UK High Court demanded disclosure of beneficial owners, and insurance claims after a U.S. Coast Guard interception were denied for sanctions violations. Maritime security consultant Lena Morris called Sarvan's run a textbook case of institutionalized evasion, and said that flag hopping and AIS spoofing are standard operating procedures for Bonyad-linked fleets. The evidence, satellite images, AIS blackouts, and offshore filings, reveals the technical skill and global reach of the ghost fleet. Each maneuver is crafted to keep oil moving and true beneficiaries hidden. On paper, the Bonyad-e Mostazafan was established to uplift the poor and disabled. Its founding charter reads like a promise of social justice, assets held in trust, profits directed to the welfare of the nation's most vulnerable. Yet the Foundation's asset registry tells a different story. Among its most prized holdings are five-star hotels, luxury shopping centers, and high-rise residential towers that dominate the Tehran skyline. The Persian Azadi Hotel, for example, stands as a symbol of exclusivity. Its suites reserved for foreign dignitaries. Its conference halls booked by multinational corporations. This single property anchors a portfolio that includes at least 4 other premium hotels, each generating steady revenue streams, far removed from the world of soup kitchens or subsidized housing. Annual income from these luxury properties is estimated to be between $2 and $3 billion US. These figures are drawn from leaked balance sheets and interviews with former executives. Rather than being distributed as direct aid, the profits are cycled back into the foundation's expanding commercial ventures. The Bonyad's real estate arm has acquired development rights to some of Tehran's most valuable land, erecting towers that cater to affluent tenants and overseas investors. These projects are insulated from market risk by a tax-exempt status that private developers can only envy. The result is a real estate empire built on the rhetoric of charity, but operated with the logic of a private holding company. For many Iranians, this contradiction is not lost. Civil society groups and international non-governmental organizations have labeled the Bonyads pseudo-charities, entities that use the language of social welfare to shield commercial operations from scrutiny. Reports from Justice for Iran and Transparency International point to a widening gap between the foundation's stated mission and its actual portfolio. In public discourse, the Bonyad's luxury assets have become shorthand for a system that preaches sacrifice while practicing accumulation. The infrastructure trap, once justified as a means to serve the oppressed, now sustains a class of beneficiaries whose interests are anything but charitable. The irony is as visible as the neon-lit towers that pierce the Tehran night, each floor a testament to the distance between mission and reality. Today, Iran's most vital infrastructure remains concentrated in opaque hands, shielded from public scrutiny and immune to market forces. As water shortages deepen and global pressures mount, the cost of unaccountable control is borne by millions. Without genuine transparency or reform, the system's architecture continues to reinforce inequality, not resolve it. The future of Iran's development hinges not just on assets, but on who truly governs them.